we'll see how all of that plays out. It's becoming a recurrent decimal, and things really need to be checked on the Lagos Island, the locations of the markets, and all of this. Well, let's move on the show. I will definitely bring you up to speed with whatever development happens at Lagos Island, because Theophilus is still on the ground to bring us news happening live from there. But the conversation over adequacy of minimum wage rates have continued to be a contentious issue, with stakeholders advocating for higher wages to address rising living costs and income disparities. On the other hand, the government is also grappling with the imposition of expatriate employment levies as a policy tool to regulate the influx of foreign workers and protect local job markets. While the government has suspended the policy, experts say it is imperative to engage in constructive dialogues and explore innovative policy solutions towards creating an inclusive economy that benefits local workers and foreign talent. For more on the perspective, I introduced him earlier. He is the Director General, Nigerian Employers Consultative Association, Mr. Adewale Oyerinde. Thank you so much. It's good to see you, DG.
Thank you. Thank you for having us once again.
Yeah. DG, what is this minimum wage really pegged on now? What is happening with regards to it? I think we should start on that note, because we see some wage bills, some gifts being given. I don't know what it's called, aside salaries, wage awards. And so which is which? Which are we expecting now at the end of the day? Is it the final one that we review, the 30,000 we used to have before?
Well, I think that there are two different concepts.
Okay.
Yeah, you know, the wage awards is done at the discretion of an employer.
Okay.
It also can be a result of negotiation, like the one we've seen, we saw with organized labor and government. I said this is a bipartite negotiation between the federal government and organized labor, which is acceptable. You know, we have about two different kind of negotiations, or three basically. The bipartite between two parties. It can be government and labor. It can be between labor and employers. It can be between employers and labor. And we've seen this over time. You know, during COVID-19, employers, we actually enter into an MOU, a bipartite agreement with organized labor, that no matter what happens during COVID, it was an unfortunate time that employers will not retrench. And employers kept faith to that agreement. It was strictly between labor and employers. Government was not involved. Now, the same context happened with the issue of the wage award. It was between government and organized labor, because employers were not part of it, which is acceptable and a good path to tread when economic situations is going south. Now, the second concept of this is the issue of the minimum wage. You know, the minimum wage, according to convention, ILO Convention 131, specify we must negotiate every 5 years to review the minimum wage. Okay. So it was that same premise that led us to arrive at the 18,000 minimum wage about 9 years ago. Or that same premise, that same concept, that same process that led us to the arrival at the 30,000 in 2018. And that is the same process that has been activated now through the inauguration of the National Minimum Wage Committee. The committee has been meeting, we've had meetings, and it has been devolved into subcommittees now to address different areas of the act that will eventually lead to the agreement, you know, of a new national minimum wage in the next few weeks.
So we expect that to happen anytime by next few weeks, right?
Yes, by April. It is expected that the committee's work should be completed by April, and then we'll have a recommendation will be made by the committee to the president, who will now either approve or discretionarily increase, reduce, or approve the recommendation of the committee, and then it goes to the National Assembly as an executive bill. And once the National Assembly passes it into law, then becomes the national minimum wage for the next 5 years, at least, following the act, the current act.
Did you agree with me that it is tough at this time? It is tough everywhere. Everyone keeps talking about it. Everywhere you go, you hear it is really tough. So I'm looking at it. Has it been members of NECA, business people? What are they saying? When do you see the country back? Because some say the country remains bleak for some months. Do you still think that way? Do you think inflation will continue to peak till maybe mid-year?
You know, good thing the president came up with the bitter pill, you know, during his inauguration. And really, you wonder where we would have been if he hadn't come up with that pill. Reports that we've seen, news that we've had, show that the last administration almost ran us aground. And if we had continued in that path, nobody knows exactly where we would have been. Some have said we all, invariably, we are all co-conspirators with the last administration. That we ate our breakfast for dinner. So now it's morning, so we all have to bear some pangs of hunger. So good that the reforms started, and progressively we are seeing some level of progress being made. Yesterday, your news item today, we saw that the allocation from FARC increased by over 10 trillion, and the federal government taking almost 4 trillion, while the states takes about 6 trillion. I said the states because what goes to the local government basically is managed by the states.
Okay, so you added both together.
So the fact is this, if we imbibe true, genuine fiscal discipline at the federal, at the state level, the amount we are talking about, each state's allocation, some say that's increased by over 50%, some say increased by over 60%, and with the 5 billion naira that the federal government gave the state earlier, if those funds are judiciously used, you will have seen the effect in the life of the citizens. Transportation will have been made better. The myriad of challenges that we're having in intercity, some of those challenges will have been resolved. So it will invariably make the negotiation of the national minimum wage easier, because the whole question you ask is this: if you agree 10,000 as national minimum wage, it is not about the quantum of the naira. It is about what exactly can that 10,000 naira buy. If Labour has they've came out on the news, they said some say they needed 1 million naira as minimum wage. In some states they quoted 500,000. It is less about the figure itself, but what exactly can that amount, or can it buy? And in the whole concept of the minimum wage, there are about three conditions that were encapsulated in the convention that you have to look at. Okay. The needs of workers and their families. You look at the economic situation. In fact, everything rests on the economic situation. So if the economy is bad, if roads are good, transportation system good, food is cheap, then it puts less pressure on the quantum of what's going to be negotiated. But when all those things are not right, then the demands of labor will be high, and then it puts pressure on employers, and it puts pressure also on government. So it all boils down to fiscal discipline. The states must be disciplined, and people must ask questions to make sure that the states use judiciously the amounts that they are currently getting, because nobody is looking at the states. Everybody is basically looking at the federal government. So more attention should be given by the states. Lagos State have set the pace without unnecessarily blowing their trumpet with different interventions that the government has. So states also everywhere should take a cue and impact the lives of their citizens. That is the way to the path towards resolving this problem.
Another state, and this has just been very objective, is Borno State, Magana Zulum. You see him almost every day on television. He monitors all of this by himself. Because one thing I've seen is most of the state governments, I think they should try to manage this initiatives or projects to support the federal government by themselves.
Absolutely. It's not rocket science. The concept of leadership is service, as it were. It's in this climb that you see somebody putting himself to serve. Then by the time they get elected, they become the bosses. They become the lords of the manor. But in the real terms, being in a position of leadership confers on you absolute responsibility to serve, and that is some of the things that has been missing in this environment. Kudos to some governors, as you mentioned, the governor of Borno State, governor of Anambra State, Chasorodo is also doing some beautiful things. Good. Governor of Lagos State has set the pace. But in your own little cocoon, even though if your allocation increases by 1 billion, let us see the the impact.
True. Now, let's talk about the expatriate employment levy. I know you will be interested in talking to that because I've had to speak to LCCI, I've spoken to Nasima, spoken to MAN, so I'm happy having NECA to talk about because I saw the press releases back to back when that happened. Yes. So what really is your reaction to this? Because many will say, government is saying, we want to protect local jobs. So what do you make of it? And the move by government to suspend it at the moment?
First let's express our commendation to the Minister for Interior, commendation to the Minister for Industry, Trade and Investment, Minister to comment to the Chairman of the Presidential Committee on Fiscal and Tax Reforms, that's Taiwo Yedele, for their proactive action, for responding proactively to our letter. It's a record that NECA reacted first when we see that news, and because we reacted from a nationalistic perspective, and because of the realities of the times and the consequences of that EEL. And I'll share with you, for us, it's more of the economy of it. The economy of it. While the objective is noble, but we believe strongly that that objective is misplaced. Because we have that it is, the EEL itself is a contraption by the last administration, which explains a lot of things. Because in the last administration, there are so many contradictions. You see a policy contradicting the other, a policy neutralizing the other. And those were the engagement we had till the last administration left. And it was a surprise when the EEL came, because we feel strongly that first, the president came up with the Presidential Committee on Presidential Fiscal and Tax Reform Committee to harmonize the taxes and levies paid by organized businesses. Yes. Currently, we pay over 60 different taxes, and the work 60 taxes, levies, and fees across the three tribes of government. And one of the key responsibilities of that presidential committee was to harmonize all these taxes, to make taxes easy to pay, to make collection efficient. Yes. Now, we are still dealing with that, waiting for the report of that committee, and we have a $15,000 and $10,000 coming from the backyard. That is a total contradiction from the work of the committee. And we feel, look, the state of organized businesses now cannot accommodate that, what we call extortionist levy. Those are part of our issues. Now come up the issue of protecting local jobs. Let me give you an instance. We spoke to one of our members that in the aviation industry, and the MD was literally almost crying that they spent almost 10 million naira to train one pilot abroad. They trained about 6 of them, Nigerians. And when they finished training, they came to the country, came back, worked for about 6 to 1 year, and progressively, one left for Dubai, one left for Europe, one left for America. They left. Now, what will that kind of business do? And this is my point. In the last 2-3 years, we have a massive exodus of Nigerian youths, Nigerian professionals, those that you call the A grades, the first 11, across sectors, leaving this country to go get jobs abroad. They did not leave because expatriates took their jobs. They left because the economy was not hospitable enough for them to stay. Yes. So they left and become expats in other climes. So the issue of protecting local jobs doesn't arise, because we also have the Immigration Act that have specified explicitly the terms and conditions for an expatriate to come to this country. And we feel, look, if we come up with this policy and ask expats in our context to pay this kind of fee, and other countries come up with a reciprocal policy and say, look, Nigerians also that are working in their countries, they should pay this amount for working in those climes. What happens? Are we ready to accommodate the number of Nigerians that probably will be coming back to this country? So for us, it's a direct economic issue. Look, we have to take a critical look at this policy. We have to take a second look at its appropriateness at this point. We have to take a critical look at its legality at this point. Unfortunately, we raised the alarm, and government responded positively. Once again, we want to commend the Minister for Interior for his proactiveness, and also the Minister for Trade, Industry and Investment, Minister for Industry, Trade and Investment for our proactiveness. And we commend government also, Asiwaju himself, for acceding to the suspension of that levy. So
finally, time is already fast spent. So what is your outlook? You know, we like to always have an outlook, despite these challenges. In how many months? How long are we going to wait? Because it's worrisome.
You know, without having a soothsayer, at the monetary policy level, the CBN has been doing quite a lot, to make sure forex, the issue concerning forex, concerning interest rate, concerning the exchange rate are addressed. They've tightened the news on the banks to make sure they sell their excess forex. They tightened the news on the BDCs, that's Bureau de Change. They're doing quite a lot to make sure that the collapse of both official and parallel markets succeeds. While the exchange rate is still high, but we believe strongly that once we can deal with the issue of the supply side, the revenue side, dollar supply side, then progressively Naira will find its value. You know that the Port Harcourt refinery, we were told it will come on board in the next 2 weeks. And I read this morning that the price of fuel might also come down with the coming on board of Port Harcourt refineries, and hopefully Dangote refinery will also come on board before the end of the year. So those indices points to some positives,
yes.
And once we continue to dig, continue on the focused path of making sure these things work, and government especially can marshal citizens' consensus around all these policies, I think within a short while we'll see some turnaround. Things are still not very, very good for the business. Businesses are still crying. And our appeal is that everybody should just hang in there for now, depending when we continue to engage government and make sure that all these reforms they start to yield their fruit. So whatever government want to do, my last appeal will be this. No matter the good intention you have, if somebody is on oxygen, if you are bringing a drum of oxygen, a cylinder of oxygen, the earlier you bring the cylinder, the better. Because once the person is dead, the cylinder might just be useless. And that is the story of businesses that have left this country, businesses that have exited this country. It's quite unfortunate they were leaving, but we believe government can do things quickly to arrest the tide of this massive exodus of organized businesses. Once a business leaves, you probably will have between 100 and 1,000 employees going out of job. And that is in the front line.
Yeah.
Behind them are the supply chain, the companies that are supplying those businesses inputs, the employees of those companies, their jobs and their survival will also be compromised. So it's a serious issue for us, and we trust that government will take proactive actions to arrest the tide quickly.
Brilliant conversation, as usual. Director General, Nigerian Employers Consultative Association there, Mr. Adewale Oyerinde. Thank you so much for your time on the show, as usual.
Thank you.